Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the January 14th Special Council meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. The question period sign-up sheet is on the partition wall near the gallery. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name on the agenda on the sheet. At the start of question period, the chair will call those who have signed up to the podium to address council. And the first item on the agenda tonight is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. For late items this evening, we are adding agenda item 14F under other business, protocol agreement working group representatives from the City of Nanaimo. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'd ask for a motion for approval of the agenda as amended. Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. I ask now for a motion for adoption of the minutes as circulated, firstly for the December 10th meeting. Councillor Martman, Councillor Thorpe seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. And secondly for the December 12th meeting. So moved, Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is the Mayor's report. I am delighted to start off on a positive note tonight. The Culture and Heritage Awards have been an important program for community building in Nanaimo since 1998. I am pleased to announce that the recipients of the 2019 Culture and Heritage Awards were approved at the special in-camera council meeting held on December 18th, 2018. And I'm very pleased to recognize the individuals who have been granted the Culture and Heritage Awards. Firstly, the 2019 Honor in Culture Award will be presented to Mr. Dean Chadwick. Congratulations to Mr. Chadwick. Secondly, the 2019 Emerging Cultural Leader Award will be presented to Mr. Nico Rhodes. Congratulations to Mr. Rhodes. And finally, the 2019 Honor in Heritage Award will be presented to the Nanaimo Historical Society, to whom I offer my sincere congratulations. These honorees will be presented with their awards during a special ceremony on April the 18th at the Port Theatre. And for those of you that support your community, I trust you'll be punching that into your electronic devices as I'm saying it. And I want to thank Mr. Barfoot, Culture and Heritage Coordinator, for working with this program in order to ensure that this wonderful system continues. The next item is a symposium on water stewardship and changing climate. I'd ask for a motion that we approve Councillor Bonner to attend the symposium on water stewardship. So moved, Councillor Armstrong. Seconder, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. We have no presentations, as I understand it, but we do have some delegations, 4 in number. And I would call forward Mr. Southward. Please. And you have 5 minutes, Mr. Southward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And again, like last time, please don't be offended. I have a new vision, and sometimes visions take 10 years, maybe 200 years to take place, so don't be too afraid. Okay. The new vision for Nanaimo. To have a new vision, we will have no power unless we have much more of the following: a will to transcend the mere survivalist mode of life, local ownership, self-reliance in agriculture and local production, unity in the natural coexistence we have as a species, the will to be self-determined, living with our means, respect for long-term residents and those whose ancestry are from here and those who are legally immigrated here, a strong recognition of what it is to be a man and a woman, because this creates inspiration and romanticism, a strong sense of nation and the natural human values that make us a viable species. First thing, we must have a Nanaimo resident first policy, like a tribe in regards to rentals and home purchases. Foreign real estate speculation must be outlawed, as with internal greed. Homes are for habitation, not speculation. Actually, Xi Jinping said that. Everyone deserves the dignity on this earth and being born with the right to stand on the bare earth as an owner. We must move to reduce residential land to the price of 0. The government will dictate the price according to the condition of the building only. A building could be worth, a rundown little shack could be worth $30,000. A great big monster house could be worth $500,000. It's all relative. If you have to sell, it's all the same. Number 3, rewrite the Tenancy Act so landlords are not so easily bankrupt by predatory tenants that simply do not pay, stay for a year, and wreck the home. This is just inclusion for dirty, rotten scoundrels that discourage people from renting out or creating low-cost rentals. The current Tenancy Act actually works against what it was designed to do. Like, for example, my friend Barry from Port Alberni. He works as a baker. About 18 years ago, he bought, old house, and then he decided he'd take the job offer to go to Victoria because he had this idea he's maybe meet somebody and raise a family in his house. So he had a rooming house in Victoria, and the people that he rented to just didn't pay. Barry's a little bit of pushover. I guess nice guys finish last, but after a while he ended up having to give him an eviction notice. And of course, they didn't leave, they didn't pay, and then he ended up, the house ended up going into foreclosure. He lost his house. It was so stressful for him. He got diverticulitis. Now he has a colostomy bag. Now he's 58 years old, and he rents with his parents and works part-time, and hopefully his bowels will get back together. So that's also a cost. That kind of thing also, the medical cost is hard on society too. So that's why they need to be rewritten. If we're self-determined, we write our own laws here. If they're wrong, we don't go along with what the province has to say. Number 4, the tax deferment program for those 55 or older must be outlawed because it is like the final solution where government can raise taxes with impunity as well as their salaries. I believe when every residential owner reaches 65, the taxes should be cut in half. So to ensure poor people have something to give to their children when they die. The greatest priority of the city is to aggressively encourage the development of farmland through rezoning and local partnerships. All non-essential big capital projects such as more seawalks must go up for public referendum as a group every 3 years. So you can have 5 items, it's only one referendum, but people can vote on 5 items, so it's not too costly. So you don't have these crazy things that really aren't going to, it's only going to help the real estate speculators who want to sell out to people from the United States or in China. That's immoral. Okay. Restore and theme to our society of what we value as a human species on a whole, to create a stronger, unified emotion. Address what we value. That's the zest of life. What do you value of the human species? For me, a strong role modeling father in society prevalent is important. But what I value most is the loving stay-home mom who homeschools her children, who teaches her children her values, who teaches her children to sing, to dance, to do artwork, to play music, teaches her children life skills. And she's the one who loves to watch her children run barefoot in the grass and whistle the songs of the birds. A society that does not recognize this doesn't appreciate that, nor do I recognize that society. So restoring what makes life beautiful, you'll have the will to change society. Otherwise, it's just going on with the materialistic survivalist mode of society.
Mr. Southward, every delegation is allotted 5 minutes, and you've exceeded yours by a little bit. Could you wrap up quickly, please?
Okay. One other issue is also having more control of what's taught at school. School should be for academics mostly only, but right now, we need to restrict, if we had power, we can restrict poisonous ideologies that are going through, because I've seen this with my son's, reading reports or at the university, and we must outlaw teachers from pushing poisonous pseudo-ideologies on little kids and young adults. For one thing, it's spreading like crazy. They're demonizing masculinity, and they're...
Mr. Southward, with great respect, I've allowed you the indulgence of a minute. We're going to move to questions.
But just to make it clear, it's masculinity is a natural recurring attribute. It's not a bad attitude. So we can-
And I'm sure it is as many things in life are. Do councillors have any questions here tonight? Mr. Southward. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time before council tonight.
I'm sure you guys are looking forward to me when I come back again.
I believe that's a possibility. Yeah. There are seats available for those of you who are standing at the back, some down on this side. The next is a delegation to Kamala Tang, President, Nanaimo Boathouse, and Ian Nymeth, Architect, regarding the Nanaimo Boathouse Society. Please. If you could do the usual, introduce yourselves at the mic.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Kamala Tang, and I'm president of the Nanaimo Boathouse Society. With me is Ian Nymeth, who's been volunteering and advising us from the start of this project, and he's here tonight to answer any technical questions you may have. We've provided you with an information package, so we trust that you are familiar with this project, which actually began 7 years ago, almost to the day, January the 15th, 2012, is when we got together for the first time. This is why we refer to the costs and benefit in 2014 dollars, as they were calculated and stated in our 2014 feasibility study, which was done by MNP. Also, a note about the drawings of the boathouse. They're only concept drawings that will be redesigned to meet the current needs and budget of the community. We are here to seek a remedy for the lack of paddling facilities in Nanaimo, asking for improved amenities, incremental if necessary, leading to the proposed boathouse and paddling center at Brecon Boat Ramp in the not too distant future. And we invite each and every one of you to visit with us at the various boat launch sites along the waterfront to better understand the conditions paddlers presently cope with and to see what the needs are. Just some quick numbers. The projected capital and startup costs, $4.6 million, the building being $3.9 million, with fees and contingency of $501,000, working capital of $200,000, plus utilities and services for the Brecon, from the Brecon parking lot to the site. Economic benefits. During the construction phase, we are looking at benefits of $8.404 million. Output operations, we're looking at $564,000 annually. And then for all the additional people and events coming to Nanaimo, $424,000 annually. As I said earlier, these numbers are calculated and stated in our 2014 feasibility study done by MNP. We are prepared to modify the design and budget to remain at a reasonable and doable level, not just recalculate them in 2019 dollars. There are many economic impacts here. We have adventure and sport tourism. Kayaking and outrigger paddling tours are popular and growing. We have several dragon boat teams, at least 10 of which race competitively, some internationally. The others are recreational. We already have a leading local marine festival, the annual Nanaimo Dragon Boat Festival, now in its 17th year, which hosts up to 72 teams, some from out of province, including some from out of province and the USA. The Crazy 8 outrigger race in the spring hosted 48 teams last year, with another 30 coming in for the singles race on the Sunday. There is interest in other festivals, but without facilities, nothing is progressed. Community and social impacts. This boathouse also speaks to the City of Nanaimo Strategic Plan 2016 to 19 and the successful cities initiative of Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. Specific areas related: active lifestyle, health and wellness, quality of life, tourism product development, the city's waterfront enhancement, community building partnerships. Furthermore, time is running. Furthermore, the State of the Island report on Vaia Summit of 2015 stated that a strong wave of seniors from across Canada continued to choose to move to Nanaimo. That has not changed. The vital signs from the Nanaimo Foundation has also projected that has set an increase of 41.3% of seniors moving here by 2035. These seniors and others will want and need to stay fit and healthy. With the programs and activities at the Boathouse, we can help you with that. We know that we live here, we have the great fortune to live here. An economic benefit, if it comes and when it comes, will be welcome, but always in balance with the needs of the community for a rich quality of life, such as what we experience from the beauty of the surrounding waters, the many small islands and coves, the trees, the birds, the fish, the marine animals, preserving and enjoying, but never exploiting. And I'll wrap up now.
Thank you, please.
We all love to walk the downtown waterfront. Now let us create the opportunity to get out on the water in small boats, not to walk. Again, we respectfully seek your serious consideration and support for improved paddling amenities leading to the Nanaimo Boathouse and Paddling Center at Brecon, and ask that it be selected as a priority for the City of Nanaimo in the upcoming strategic priority plan, and we set a pathway and work together to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Armstrong? I believe you brought some supporters tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Deng. Having gone through your report, and I do realize that the figures from 2014, so we could add considerable amount of money on, I'm sure, to the cost now. But what about the issue with parking? That still remains a big concern in that area, especially now that BC Ferries has purchased some of that other land?
Yes, parking, I have mentioned it before. Parking is a continual problem there, but as you know, we've looked at this, we've worked, there was a committee about parking for that area, and I know that they would like to strike it again to get it going, and we are willing to work with the city and the other groups, the big boats, to resolve it, but right now it is just an ongoing issue. Now, with the boathouse, if you look at the plan for the boathouse, our boats and vehicles will be coming in from the parking lot into the lower level. So it will not add a whole bunch of cars in the parking area. Boats will go in and parking can be someplace else. Many groups come in they partner and share rides and things like this. And I think we can make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons, actually. Councillor I hit it a little too hard tonight, sorry. You'll follow Councillor Hemmons, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you for your presentation and your package, very informative. The Port of Nanaimo is looking at redesigning the marina, and I'm wondering if you've had a conversation with them. I understand Brecon is your first choice, but there may be an opportunity with some development going on just down the road. Would you consider a different location, or are you set on Brecon?
Ian?
Yes, Your Worship and members of council. Yes, we did have several meetings with many of the stakeholders and the local property owners in that area. And we did consult them, and we have all of their support. We looked at various other sites all across Nanaimo, and this is the one that is absolutely suitable and very appropriate for the kind of activity that we're doing. The actual lot, as you know, the site is owned by the city, and that's a huge plus. So we're not fighting ownership of any kind.
But sorry, specific to the Port Authority development there as well, you look at the topography down there and the traffic, it is not really suitable for our little boats. I think we could have really dangerous issues down there.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegation. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your patience over these many years. I quite like this concept. I've liked it for a long time. When we talked a number of years ago, you mentioned something, the fact that Nanaimo isn't a point when kayak tours are going up and down the coast, and how would the boathouse help with that?
That was with specific reference to the BC Marine Trails that were setting up a trail system. Now, 18 months ago or last year, they got permission. Finally, they've done a lot of great work to have an official trail go by. But if you notice where the stopping is, it's not in Nanaimo. They've indicated a place, I don't know if it's, maybe it's Newcastle Island. They spoke to us, we've been involved with them. You would have a letter of support from them going back 4 years ago. And they were just chomping at the bits to have Nanaimo listed as one of these stopping points. Because they need, when they go on tours 3-4 days, they need to restock. They have to do laundry. They would love a shower and somewhere to store their boats while they're out in town doing stuff. And they saw the boathouse as a just key spot for them. So yes, they're very supportive.
And finally, do you have any ideas on funding for this project or fundraising for this project?
That's early days yet, but I will be very clear with you that when we came up with it many years ago, we were brave and ambitious, and we were very keen to do as much as we could to raise the funds for the capital, for the building. And, well, we've all gotten older and wiser, and, we are, committed to raise the money for the equipment, the boats, all those things that have to go with it. But I do not know if we can undertake to raise the money for the capital of the building as well. So we would be looking for your assistance. But that will come in as part of the process. As I said, if we could strike a working committee after, with the city involved, ourselves and the stakeholders, those are all the issues we would address. As you know, as I said, we do have a feasibility study, and we'd be covering everything in it again and updating it. And that would also deal with fundraising.
One, if I may, thank you. In terms of the ongoing work that the boathouse would do, is it your plan that this would be run by a society? And if so, what would be their annual operating costs? Similar to how we do the, like the curling rink and things like that.
We have all the details here, and I think I pointed out some of it in the handout I gave you. Mm-hmm. And, but we can meet another time and work through those numbers. And yes, we would prefer that it be done by a nonprofit group.
I was asking
with
more
guidance from the city.
Yeah. I was asking more for the folks that are watching and in the audience.
Say that again, sorry?
I was asking more for the folks who don't have a copy of this. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I gave you some numbers a little bit ago, but let's see. Ay, ay, ay. This is such a big book. Yes, we've got it all worked out, but, 2 pages full.
Your Worship?
Breakdown.
Your Worship, I just want to add that the package that Ms. Tang has handed out will be posted on our website and available as well, so people could have a look.
Thanks.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you. And if you have any more questions, anytime, you can reach us. Okay? Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank
Our
you.
next delegation is Lynn Burrows and Joan Hunting on behalf of the Brecon United Church Outreach Team. If you could introduce yourselves when you get to the mic, please, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Lynn Burrows, and I'm here this evening with Joan Hunting as a delegation from Brecon United Church Mission and Outreach Team. Your Honor, Mayor Krog and Nanaimo City Councillors. Claudio Aguilera from Tillicum Lelam Aboriginal Friendship Centre is unable to join us, but has sent his letter of support to you all. And this letter, I understand, is being provided to you. It is an honor to come before you this evening to request financial support for the continuation of a series of workshops regarding the very important issue of reconciliation. Something I know most of you, perhaps all of you, hold dear to your hearts. Councillor Don Bonner is bringing forth a motion for your consideration later this evening regarding the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 57. This is directed at governments to provide education to public service members on the history of Aboriginal peoples. Our delegation is here this evening asking for financial support that includes such workshops. This past October, our team planned a highly successful reconciliation workshop called Building Bridges Through Understanding the Village, facilitated by professional Kathy Camilleri from Port Alberni and held at Tillicum Lelam Aboriginal Friendship Centre's facility on Halliburton Street. Our partnership of Tillicum Lelam Aboriginal Friendship Centre and Brecon United's outreach team is now seeking to proceed with 5 additional reconciliation workshops in 2019. These will have a very positive impact in our city and beyond. Financial assistance is needed for workshop facilitation, food, and supplies. In our budget for each workshop facilitation, including travel expenses for the facilitator, is $1,600, with food and supplies at $400. Our delegation today is requesting $10,000 to cover all costs for 5 workshops throughout 2019. Tillicum Lelam will continue to provide free space for 4 of these 5 workshops. Unfortunately, we were unable to coordinate the location with the facilitator for one of these workshops. The first workshop, Paddling Together, will provide follow-up for the powerful Building Bridges workshop held in October and will consist primarily of participants of that October workshop. 57 people attended, and at the end of the day's event, 48 of the 48 participants who completed evaluation surveys indicated that the workshop met or exceeded their expectations. Many of the respondents indicated a desire for further workshops. Our plans include 2 additional series, with each series consisting of the Building Bridges workshop followed by the Paddling Together workshop. I'll explain a tiny bit more about these later. These events will be offered free of charge, primarily to local service providers, as many more service providers expressed interest in attending the initial workshop last October than we were able to accommodate. Service providers can initiate far-reaching changes once they truly understand what Indigenous people have experienced and are experiencing. The workshops change and enable connection and interaction with professionals and Indigenous people, thereby having long-range and broad impacts on our community. Benefits provided are like seeds that grow, take root, and spread in multiple ways, enabling profound changes in the lives and relationships of not only workshop participants, but the people and workers around them, in addition to the culture, the very culture of their organizations. Hundreds, possibly thousands of lives in our city and beyond will be impacted. Facilitators. Kathy Camilleri is an Aboriginal woman who has coordinated healing programs in the Aboriginal community for 23 years, and she comes highly recommended. Anybody who's ever done her workshops just rave about her. And she was wonderful at the one in October. Meredith Martin, and this is something new that was just added, information added last night, will be assisting Kathy at some, possibly all the workshops. Meredith is of Coast Salish ancestry, and her people are of the Nanaimo Nation here in Nanaimo. She has assisted Kathy in her workshops for the past 12 years. And a bit of information about the workshop details. Each series consists of the following 2 workshops: Building Bridges Through Understanding the Village. During this experiential workshop, we explore our personal role in supporting the revival of the values that work so beautifully in Indigenous villages for thousands of years. We also explore in depth the effects of residential schools, boarding schools, and the policy of assimilation.
Ms. Burrows, we're past the 5.
I'm over?
Well, if we
Okay.
could wrap up, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be real quick. So the paddling together is super important. It is a strategic planning workshop designed to help the organizations create a path towards working more collaboratively and respectively through strategic planning, goal setting, agreed upon values, and the next steps in reconciliation.
Thank
So
you.
hopefully, in
Aye.
addition to approving our funding request, you will also make a point of personally participating in these workshops. We expect you will find them informative, enlightening, and extremely helpful in your daily work, representing and working for all residents of Nanaimo that I know.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from councillors? Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, through you to the delegation. Did you apply for any federal or provincial grants for this?
Not yet, but I was advised that come this fall, if we want to do some in 2020, that would be a very good idea. But this was, our first workshop was in October, mid-October, and this has been a process that's taken a little time, and we're just on top of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman?
Thank you, through you. I'm wondering approximately how many people attended the workshops in October?
There were 57. The workshops are geared up for 60 people.
Okay.
And then there's volunteers that are there and a few others, but
And did you apply for any City of Nanaimo grant funding?
not for that workshop, no. That workshop was paid for by the
Provision grant.
It was
But they could this
Sorry.
year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but right now, this year, you could look at applying for different community grants?
I think it's done now.
But we must have more coming forward. Next year, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegation. Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. Well, first off, I've attended a few of these workshops, both a blanket ceremony here in Nanaimo and the Village, which is a workshop done with a group down in Cowichan. Both were very eye-opening and moving. I'll never forget them. I wonder if your funding with the United Church, is there any funding through the United Church for these types of events?
We received funding for the first workshop through the Comox Nanaimo Presbytery, but that funding is no longer available.
And are you expecting any more at all, or
No.
none? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance tonight. The next delegation. The next delegation is regarding a safety and security plan for Newcastle neighborhood, and forgive me if I mispronounce this name, Daryl Gorfie, and Fred McDonald. And if you can introduce yourself and your 5 minutes. Thank you.
The name is Daryl Jerfy, and thanks to the mayor and councillors for hearing me today. As you probably saw earlier today, I did send several documents out with the hope you would review them. I understand you had a busy day and that may not have been done. But there are a lot of issues going around our neighborhood, and just to add context to what I'll say today, trying to keep to 5 minutes, just a paraphrase of those documents. As you see, there are a lot of people here tonight. Can we get a show of hands of how many people are affected by this decision here? So, with that, the Newcastle neighborhood is a long-established neighborhood in Nanaimo here, and most of the people have lived in that neighborhood for 20 years. Generally speaking, we're a bunch of seniors and a young group moving in the neighborhood, but highly supportive of a lot of initiatives that have come out from city planning and other things. We've recently supported a mental health facility at Rose Hill and Terminal. There's a number of apartments that actually pride themselves in providing subsidized housing for people who are just getting started in life. So when this initiative came on, we are a compassionate group, but the manner in this was presented to our neighborhood really has been astounding and very extraordinary, and hit most of us pretty hard when we did hear of it. Since then, since it's been announced, I've had to do a lot of research, and I've talked to a lot of people. The resident businesses near Tent City, I've talked to a lot of them. We're not satisfied with the police response in their area. They felt victimized and felt much more could have been done to alleviate some of the problems. Tent City was, for all intents and purposes, a staged event set up by an organized group, openly admitted in their website that they wanted to be disruptive. They bussed in extra people and wanted to make the event bigger than what it really was. It was really a man-made crisis in a lot of ways. I've attached a couple of articles. Tom Fletcher has done quite a bit of work on that and has published 3 articles in, I believe, the Victoria Times. The response from the city and police was to observe, negotiate, and take little enforcement action to the crimes that were actually committed in that area. As a police officer, I am retired now, I am surprised by some of these enforcement action for those crimes. For me, the RCMP has a lot of covert measures that could have really removed the crime aspect from that group and made it a lot more palatable to deal with some of the situations that were there, and may have given the city officials and BC Housing a better opportunity to make an assessment of what was there. But that really was never done throughout the summer. Once the organization criminal activity was removed, excuse me, I'm repeating that, that didn't happen at Tent City. As police observed and negotiated, much of the security was downloaded to private security companies. Crime is actually something that police should be looking after. Crime skyrocketed to unprecedented levels and largely went unimpeded. The general public avoided the area, business suffered, and at least one closed in that area. Based on the content of the Public Safety Committee minutes, the Public Safety Committee had a lot of information on the level of crime that was happening, but continued to observe, engage, and negotiate with the organizers. Few arrests were made in relation to the actual number of offenses. Media was reporting frequently, and the public became very frustrated by the end of the summer. The city has to assume some responsibility for their involvement whether helpful or detrimental to the process. The city has succeeded in taking a group with a high propensity of crime, splitting into two and dropping into two neighborhoods. And that's had a very serious impact. The August 2 public safety meeting was the last public safety meeting. At that time, they talked about unprecedented crime levels going on, and the group planning a staged event at a school. And since that, there hasn't been public safety meetings held here, probably for a number of reasons, including an election and new people. During the information sessions in November 2018 for placement in temporary housing was to provide certain control measures. Those measures including providing security for the site, controlling access for residents only, not allowing visitors for the first while. I did speak with Violet Hayes of Island Crisis, specifically on December 5th. She said to be successful, they need to control the visitors. Really, even to today, that's not happening. Some of the security for the immediate neighborhood, police would be the main source, but they were going to provide some security as well. None of these measures have been fully implemented yet in the neighborhood. Without controlled access, the site has become a magnet for unknown persons in the immediate neighborhood. These visitors gain access by jumping over the fence, crawling under it.
If I've been fairly indulgent with all the delegations tonight, if you could wrap up too, please.
So those offenses that are taking place, there's actually drug dealers that live on site, many thefts, all the apartment buildings around are being victimized. Car alarms are going off 5 o'clock in the morning. People are scared to leave their houses, to even go and check on their cars in the middle of the night. Shoplifting, Husky, Midland Tools, and the 7-Eleven are being extreme. They don't even call the police anymore because the response has been less than good. Garbage bins are not covered. Birds are hauling garbage all over the neighborhood. There's public urination, defecation, assaults, public urination. There was an explosion nearby. Now, all these aren't residents, but there's the attraction of the other people that are causing a lot of the issues.
Again, I've given you more time than anyone else, so I think I'd like to move to questions if we could.
So if I could tell you what I'm asking for? Okay, I'd like council to review a plan for providing policing to the Newcastle neighborhood and to commit to providing direct, visible, proactive measures rather than the reactive measures that were used at 10th City. You know, one of the reasons why I want to see a plan put in place, because I've talked to the police. The response wasn't really overwhelming in the month of December, and most of the police and Island Crisis or BC Housing has talked to any of the immediate neighbors along the fence. A plan needs to be put in place. I have another one here to conduct a managerial review. Nobody wants to hear about an audit, but at the same time, this has potential.
I'm not being disrespectful of what you have to say. I can assure you from the questions you're going to get from council that we are more than conscious of potential solutions and the issues, and I don't wish to treat one delegation much differently than another, in fairness, and Councillor Armstrong's already on the list of people who have questions, please.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and as I've met with many of you before, again, I'm sorry that you have to go through this. This was legislation enacted by the government, so it bypassed all the city rules, zoning, and all that, as you're aware, so that's why there was no community engagement. So that is an issue. Later tonight, I will be making a motion to have staff explore the possibility of deeming that a nuisance property so that they do have to live by the rules and laws. So if I can continue, I think we've had some updates tonight, which we can't discuss because it was done in camera, but I think, hopefully that there will start to be steps taken. But that's one of the tools I believe that we as a city council have to help the residents move forward. So when it's time for notice and motions, I'll be doing that. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Mr. Geoffrey, thank you for your time here and presenting. First, I just got a question through the chair. You had a number of requests of council, and I'd just like to hear the completion of that set there.
Well, the first one is the policing plan. This and all the other situations that you're going to arise with as far as housing supported, housing needed, is going to tax our police resource. So I think we need a plan. The other part is, I talked about a managerial review of sorts. I've participated in several of them. They have a tendency, nobody wants to be audited, but they have a tendency of getting rid of some of the redundant policies and procedures and bringing in new ideas and refreshing. So I think it may be something council might look at. Ensure the RCMP provide information sessions. And I've talked to RCMP officers in the last couple of days, and they are looking at doing that. It is time and creating locations and that, but would like support for them talking to neighbors. Again, a lot of these people don't want to leave their houses. They aren't even walking their dogs. They won't go out at night. So it may be that the RCMP has to go to them. Providing grants. A lot of these are seniors on fixed incomes. Everybody's a fixed income, but now people are having to buy alarm systems. That's about $2,000. People are considering putting fences up just to keep people out. That's average price $3,000. So consider grants for the neighbors that are directly affected and can't do anything else. And then the ongoing cleanup. I know you guys have done a lot of cleanup as a result of Tent City and all the other locations in town as well. Don't forget about us. Enforce the city bylaws on what can be done, whether it be parking, noise, garbage, recycling, all the applicable things that can be done. We'll support you on that, but we would like some support as well. Engage with the business of rental properties. We have a lot of properties that have already had their tenants give notice to leave. These are long-time businesses. That's affecting them both financially and losing the good tenants that they wanted to keep. Tenants that wanted to live in that area as well. People looked at the official community plan and moved there for a reason, and that's changed. So come up with some, and we've talked to people at the Chamber of Commerce. They're engaged, so through some avenues, please engage that and look after the businesses that are being impacted. And additionally, I've been a policeman for 34 years, and mostly in drug enforcement. I was there when the Vince Kane coroner's report was put forward, and many things got implemented, but a lot didn't. Everything went to a harm reduction and a housing first model. It basically meant that you had to go to a position that you were homeless before you were going to get help. And there's so many people. And if you look at some of the issues of overdoses, people are dying alone in their own apartments. The issue isn't just with homeless. It's a big issue out there. So look at bigger issues. I've attached here a recovery first model. It's one, but it is done by doctors here in BC using BC resources to advance something. It may or may not work, but it is a pretty good model to start taking a look at other things. Look at something different than housing first. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I can wait. Thank you for that. For the community, I appreciate that this is a very difficult situation, and this is temporary housing. I'm grateful for the efforts that the RCMP and the housing provider and the community of getting together and problem solving on how to mitigate some of the issues. And I know that this council is taking very seriously the community safety. Everybody deserves to be safe here in the community. And to get through this, we're going to have to work together to solve this issue. And on the bigger point, I think that it's in the long term, addiction has serious consequences. There's a large criminal element with it, and it's an illness that we all really need to take seriously. And we need the proper resources put there around detox, recovery, and the tools. I worked at the therapeutic community within the prison, and we need our prison system to be helping individuals get through and not making them worse, so that we do have tools when crime is committed. There's options to help people out. So I hope that the community can get together and really rally to get this type of resources to solve this issue at its root. So thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you, through the chair. Councillor Gesselbrock just expressed himself more with the same thoughts that I was going to say. I can assure you that every one of us on City Council has heard what the neighbourhood has to say. We definitely have our concerns, and we're working hard with the city, the province, and the providers, and we're hoping with the community, so that all of us working together we can make the neighborhood safer again. And I agree that we definitely need to do more when it comes to those with addictions and recovery, because this problem will keep on going on and on. We've got a lot of work to do, but I can assure you we are all listening and working hard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, I wonder if I may get you to defer to councillors who haven't asked questions first. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, and I don't believe I do have any questions to the delegation, but I wanted to, I think, compliment Councillor Gesselbrock on his words, and Councillor Martman echoed them. I think what he said made a lot of sense. And if nothing else, I want to thank you and your neighbors for coming this evening and showing us that you care about your neighborhood. Believe me, we have heard your concerns, and I want you to know, and your neighbors to know, that we take those concerns seriously. We are listening, and we have just come out of an enclosed meeting for 3 hours. We have been discussing this situation in depth. We've been brainstorming how can we improve the situation both in the short term and in the longer term, which I think is an important factor in this. So you are being listened to. You have our sympathy. We understand your frustration. This whole process, as far as Terminal Avenue site, as you know, was forced upon us. It happened very quickly, and quite frankly, some of the processes and checks and balances have not been put in place as quickly as they should have been. And I am hopeful that that will improve in the near future. We're not going to solve the whole situation, obviously, but we want to do what we can to make it better for the people in that community, but in the greater community and the neighbors there. So please understand that you are being listened to, and I assure you that we will work to try and do what we can to make this situation better and safer for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegations. I'm going to mirror what everyone else has said here. I have been listening to the conversation. I've been listening to the complaints. I understand your frustration. We are dealing with a societal problem. And as a society, we're going to have to deal with this issue. That means working together. And I can assure you that Council is more than willing to work to get this problem solved. And we deal and talk about this daily. And I can also assure you that we're willing to work with anybody who's willing to work and help bring a solution to this problem. It's been a stumble since this move has taken place, but I know that the organizations and the groups that are involved in here are keen on one thing, and making the neighborhood safe. And I can assure you that will happen, and it will happen soon.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, you want to make a motion? All right, thank.
I did want to say, you made a comment about people not calling the police anymore. They need to call the police, because unless you're calling the police, we don't know there's an issue. It has to happen, it has to be tracked. We have to know that those people, if they are caught, are from Tent City, are from the supportive housing, or are they from another area? Because we also have to recognize that many of those people that are in the supportive houses are victims themselves. A lot of them don't ask for what's going on, and they don't want to see that happen either. So we need to try and balance all of that off. So I think it's really important that you do call the police if you don't like the police reaction, and I mean, it pains me as a former police officer too, but I think it's important. Lay complaints against what you believe is an inadequate police investigation. That's the only way we're going to change the mindset of some of the investigators, as you know. But it is really important that if you don't call the police, these statistics aren't being tracked. And secondly, it's really important that we confirm our information, that something did happen, because we talked about this. There's a lot of false rumors flying around. And that's not really fair to the residents that are trying to, make things better, because we need to base our information on facts. So I think those are 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Did you want a response from me at all?
No, I just
okay, thank you.
Let me say to you that obviously, as council has expressed already, and I hesitate to be repetitive, we read the emails, we take the phone calls. Many of you have been responded to directly by various members of council. We are very conscious of this. Let me say personally that it has not turned out the way I had hoped or expected. I don't think there's any question about that. I think most people in this community were hopeful that the elimination of Tent City and the erection of temporary housing, supportive housing units would in fact be a positive step. I, like many councillors, including Councillor Thorpe, expressed it well. We're quite hopeful that given what has happened, the reality on the ground, which has been conveyed to us in no uncertain terms by yourself tonight, by the citizens living in the area, by business owners, by the RCMP, by the Island Crisis Care Society itself, that this did not start off in the way that it was hoped. Clearly, there have been significant issues, and it is not fair that the citizens of any area of our community live in the level of fear and concern that is being experienced by all of you here tonight, and many of you who are watching at home. All of us wish we had some immediate solution, but what I can tell you without listing everything is that presently, and as has been happening for some time now, city staff have been attending meetings with the Island Crisis Care Society, the RCMP, BC Housing, and the neighbours, as many of you know, providing feedback to both the Island Crisis Care Society, who has the contract to manage that supportive housing unit at 250 Terminal, and BC Housing on operational matters. That includes site design relating to improving resident and community safety and minimizing the neighborhood impacts, which you're all feeling. Communicating with individual community members and neighborhoods, the neighborhood, to provide educational information and helping clarify who can actually address the particular concerns, as Councillor Armstrong suggested tonight. There is a difference between bad behavior and criminal behavior, and criminal behavior should be reported accordingly. Facilitating hosting meetings on neighborhood safety with the RCMP, that's been ongoing and will continue. With respect to RCMP support, which is within the jurisdiction of the city, we've increased support, neighborhood patrols for the RCMP Bike Patrol Unit, site safety reviews and recommendations, training for Island Community Crisis Care Society, Island Crisis Care Society, improving resident community safety security, support for their staff, including assisting in evicting residents who are not abiding by their tenancy and good neighbor agreements, and coordination education. I think, as all of you know, this facility is not governed by the Residential Tenancy Act. People can be removed as soon as they literally break their agreement, and that has not been happening in the manner that one would expect. We expect a great deal to happen in the next couple of weeks. And if it doesn't, I can say to you that this council will do whatever it can to ensure that there is a far more effective response from BC Housing and the Island Crisis Care Society with respect to its operation. There are unquestionably some individuals there who should not be in this kind of a facility, and their behavior is entirely criminal in nature, and there is a criminal justice system that should be dealing with that. In the longer haul, this city has an obligation to ensure that there are sites made available, because this is not just a temporary problem. We know that. Sadly, this kind of problem occurs in every community of any significant size in the province. The province has moved to address it. I would describe in the kindest language I can use that the response was quite quick in many respects, but clumsily handled, to say the least. And unfortunately, the victims of it are many. Firstly, the people who live in the neighborhood. Secondly, those individuals who are trying to drag themselves and bring themselves out of addiction or mental health issues, who are there living with people who they probably don't wish to be with. But most sadly for me, as someone who has lived in this community a long time, is it has created, if you will, victims of those in the community who have worked long and hard to try and secure support from other levels of government whose responsibility it is to assist in dealing with addiction and mental health issues. It has hurt their efforts, as it will continue to hurt efforts in this community as we work with the provincial and federal governments, if they wish to step on board, to deal with these ongoing social issues. So sadly, I think at the end of the night, and forgive me for going on too long, I guess I'm exercising my privilege as mayor, there are a lot of victims here, including the solutions that this community will need to work with the provincial and federal governments to implement over time, so that the next time, and hopefully there will be next times where the provincial government steps up with the funding and the supports to ensure these kind of facilities are built, because we know that there are groups of people literally camping around our community in our parks, people who need assistance, people who, when they want assistance, don't necessarily find it, whether it be in treatment facilities or a continuum of treatment that will enable them to literally reform their lives. All of us are victims to some extent, but I assure you, and I think it's obvious from what you heard tonight, that the city is well aware of it. We very much appreciate your attendance and the numbers. We've heard your message. I can assure you that I'm sure the province of British Columbia and BC Housing and the Island Crisis Care Society have heard your message, as have the RCMP in terms of its response as well on our behalf as mayor and council. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I would require a motion for the adoption of consent items. And those are the committee minutes. Ms. Gurry, we can do all three. Seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. We now move on to a number of reports. And the first is the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities resolutions. Ms. Gurry, over to you.
Thank you, Worship. This report, the purpose of this report is to present to you for your consideration resolutions for submission to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities for the consideration at their 2019 Annual General Meeting and Convention. So there is the two resolutions that staff have researched and provided the background information for the resolutions that we had presented to us by council earlier. So we are just looking for your recommendation to move forward with those.
Question.
Councillor Armstrong.
A question on A. A already went forward last year to the AVICC where it was turned down.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Armstrong, I'll actually let Mr. Lindsay respond to that, because I believe it didn't actually get onto the floor. So I'll just let Mr. Lindsay respond.
Your Worship, through Councillor Armstrong, so last year, Council made a resolution that was specific to parks DCCs and the ability to use parks DCCs for the construction of artificial turf fields. The province took the position that DCCs could be used for natural fields but not artificial fields. And there was a resolution that was made by Council at the time. Ultimately, it did not make it to AVICC, and when it was forwarded to UBCM, it did not make it to the floor. However, there was a resolution from West Kelowna that was received at the 2018 UBCM, and that's outlined in your report, and that was endorsed by UBCM at that time. Of course, we have not heard back from the province on a response to the 2018 resolutions at this point.
Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Lindsay, a point of clarification. If it's already at UBCM and we're just waiting on that decision around West Kelowna, is it redundant for us to submit this one? Or is it a good idea to submit this one in case that one fails and this is a second attempt?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Hemmons, I think it's worth considering this motion if you think about the fact that the resolution last year was more specific in nature. It was really about parks DCCs, and if I understand the intent here, it's more to ask for reconsideration that there may be other costs associated with growth that are not allowed to be collected for today. So some of those charges in the example is often brought up, that fire halls, for example, solid waste management, cultural facilities, those are not allowed to be collected as DCCs. So this, I would define this as or describe this as a little broader resolution than maybe what was considered and ultimately passed by UBCM last year.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm quite in favor of both of these resolutions, and specifically these resolutions deal with ways that cities can raise money in different ways, and they also deal with the issue of asset management in the long term, both not just built structures, but as mentioned, cultural facilities, that sort of thing. So I think the time has come for municipalities to branch out a bit and have a little bit more flexibility in how we raise funds and how we are able to spend funds that we do raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner, Councillor Thorpe, pardon me. I want to apologize, Councillor Bonner. I should have let Councillor Thorpe go first, but that's my error, and I apologize to Councillor Thorpe.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I was just going to make the point, but actually Mr. Lindsay made it already, that I think this resolution is more general than the one that went forward last year. And I think it's a very worthwhile resolution, and I think it's beneficial to us to put it forward again and see where it goes. So I'll certainly be supporting these. Thank you.
I'm working through it. It's a little stiff tonight. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. The intention behind both these motions with respect to development cost charges and then a follow-up one with respect to how taxation is calculated and potential new tools for that, is that if we look at how we fund projects and how we fund infrastructure and how we raise taxes, it hasn't really changed a lot in quite some while with the governing legislation. So both of these were meant to be more general in application and a more general review to really sort of ask the province, hey, maybe it's time with changing contexts, changing real estate markets. We're all aware of the affordability and the speculation, but also with respect to the additional one around taxation is, can we actually start to really tax for the impact that growth is having on our communities? I'm very appreciative of the motions or the resolutions that staff have drafted, so I thank you for that. I think they captured my intention very well, so thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I would like to move both recommendations.
Seconder, Councillor Martman. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The next is the Port Theatre Community Performing Arts Centre funding. Ms. Mercer, look to you tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the December 17th council meeting, Council passed a resolution to support the Port Theatre grant as the applicant for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant Program. And as part of that funding, the city had committed $4.6 million to fund it from our own funds. That is $4.5 million in borrowing and $100,000 from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. And to show the city's commitment to the project, the application requires that we pass the first 3 readings of a borrowing bylaw for the $4.5 million and a council resolution for the $100,000 from the infrastructure reserve. And that's what we're here for tonight.
Councillor Armstrong.
Me? Oh, it's still on,
Right.
sorry. Well, I'll just move the recommendations 1 to 4 then.
The first the first would have to be a motion as set out, respecting a motion that Port Theatre Bylaw number 2019, number 7282, pass first reading. So moved, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. And secondly, a motion that the Port Theatre Borrowing Bylaw 2019, number 7282, pass second reading. Moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. And finally, a motion that Port Theatre Borrowing Bylaw 2019, number 7282, pass third reading. Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. And finally, a motion that Council approve funding $100,000 of the city's commitment of the Port Theatre Performing Arts Centre funding from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor?
No,
Pardon me. Sorry, Councillor Bonner. Excellent. A question. Breaking up the...
Yeah, I thought, we just want to keep going. We'd solve world hunger by the time we're done here, just rip through them all. I have a question regarding the $100,000. If in the event that the grant application is unsuccessful, what happens to this $100,000 that is coming out of the council's strategic fund as that amount is not dealt with in the bylaw?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, that the money stays in the reserve and is available to fund other projects or initiatives.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. I'm not asking for the negatives. The next is the 2019 Culture and Heritage Grant recommendations. Mr. Lindsay, we look to you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Just for the second item there, I got a conflict of interest with being on part of one of the boards, so I have to remove myself.
You were certainly excused, and thank you for pointing that out. Is that sufficient disclosure for the record, Ms. Gurry?
Yes, we can follow up with Councillor Gesselbrock as to what board he is on for the minutes, and
Perhaps Councillor Gesselbrock could...
Just a partner of the one of the board members.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll give Councillor Gesselbrock a moment to remove himself. Now over to you, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, we're here this evening seeking Council's direction with respect to the 2019 Culture and Heritage Grants. This report may look familiar to Council as it came to your meeting, I believe it was December the 12th. It was originally intended to be a Finance and Audit Committee meeting, but it ended up being a special council meeting. At that meeting, you received this report. I did want to outline there is one change from that time. Following the December 12th meeting, we noticed an error on that staff had done when when reviewing the grants. So the Mid-Island Youth and Community Development Cooperative, which is under the 2019 project grants, in the original report, it was identified as receiving $2,350. That actually exceeded the overall portion of their budget that's allowed for under the terms, and as such, the revised number is $1,222. There are no other changes within the report, Your Worship.
So we've saved $1,000, so to speak. Councillor Bonner, are you in line, or I just haven't turned you off?
You haven't turned me off.
You're out now, sorry.
You just won't go away. Oh, there you go.
Any questions for Mr. Lindsay, or can someone make the motion? Moved by Councillor Hemmens, a motion to improve the 2019 Culture and Heritage Grant, seconded by Councillor Armstrong, I believe. Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. The next is the UBCM Community Child Care Planning Program Grant. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening, we're seeking Council's endorsement for an application for the Union of BC Municipalities for the funding under what's called the Community Child Care Planning Program. This would be an opportunity to allow us to collect the grant and proceed with work, what I would describe as data collection on daycare throughout the community, and basic and what may be better described as a needs assessment. The way the recommendation is phrased, of working with our partners, we are actively discussing with other member municipalities within the regional districts who may want to participate, and I know that some municipalities are actually considering this at their councils as we speak. And the hope is that we'll have multiple partners that will be able to come forward with potentially the city leading a collaborative project to look at the issues around daycare supply across the region.
Thank you very much. Motion, Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I have a question on that. When you say you're developing an inventory of existing child care spaces, is that just those that are licensed, or is that any child care space?
Your Worship, my understanding is the needs assessment would look at all existing opportunities for childcare, but then look at what the needs are overall in the community, and more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but just as important, where in the community those are required.
Follow up. So if you, during that, and you find some that are in contravention of the Ministry of Licensing, are you going to be reporting those?
Your Worship, I wouldn't expect that this would go into a detailed review of anybody who's operating without licenses. I think this would start at a point where we'd be looking at the data that would be provided by the province in terms of their licensing, known daycares throughout the community as a baseline to get an understanding of what's available, but not intended to go as a search for anybody who may be operating without the necessary licenses.
Moved by Councillor Brown. The motion to support the application is set out, seconded by Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Sorry? Oh, Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Lindsay, a question. I understand the deadline for this application is in 4 days. Is that correct? And further to that, if I may, the report states that we're working with other governments. Can you tell us who those partners are, and do you think that we're on track to meet this deadline?
In Your Worship, I apologize. That's somewhat why the report is general in nature with the recommendation, because those partners are still working with their respective councils to get the required resolution to proceed. But those partners would be all the member municipalities within the regional district, so Qualicum, Parksville, Lanceville, and then I know at the regional board, I understand that there's going to be a presentation not until after the deadline, but we've been advised that if in the end all partners are agreed and favorable to participating, there may be still an opportunity to have all 5, which would result in a $125,000 grant.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmens. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I cannot support this, and I may be alone in my view of this, and perhaps I'm being cynical, but I see this as a download from the provincial government, and I see it as a Trojan horse with a baited hook of $25,000 per community, not very much money. And first of all, if you'll allow me, I'd like to point out that the subject matter in our staff report says UBCM Community Child Care Planning UBCM Community Child Care Planning Program grant. Well, UBCM is administering the money, but this money is not from UBCM, it's provincial government money. I think this is a bit disingenuous. It's $25,000 of bait, and if we take the bait, we're going to be on the hook for assuming responsibility to some degree for providing childcare, which is not a municipal function. Furthermore, I have a real concern that minor government officials from the provincial government have actively been lobbying through emails and even phone calls to elected officials to promote this. And I don't find that either usual or, in fact, appropriate. So that puts my back up a little bit. I notice in the report, in the attachment to the report, that this money is not simply for a needs assessment. It's to develop a detailed childcare action plan, and furthermore, that action plan will be supported with sufficient resources. And it also, in another place, points out that the provincial government does not guarantee future funding. So when I add those things together, I see us being asked to take the first step towards assuming provincial responsibility. And I would have no problem with an assessment of childcare needs in our community, but to go beyond that and suggest that we need to develop an action plan and be prepared to support that with funding down the way, I will not support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I absolutely will be supporting this. I'm very appreciative of the provincial government investing $1 billion into childcare spaces, which are badly needed around the province and also in our community. Often, if you want to get the final stream of funding to fund those particular programs, you do need to have a plan in place that shows the need and how it could be delivered on. So I would absolutely support this.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I will not be supporting for the reasons outlined by Councillor Thorpe, as well as I'm concerned about the liability to the city if it continues down that road, and as he stated, the downloading from provincial responsibility to the municipal levels of government, I think is wrong as well. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Councillor Thorpe, for that side to it. I hadn't seen that. I appreciate that. I don't agree with it, but I do think that childcare is a municipal issue. And even though typically in the past the provinces have paid for it, as I've said many times before, if the problem exists in our town, it's our issue because it does take a village to raise a child. And I think that we can be somehow responsible, or at least find ways to make sure that we have more childcare spaces in our town. And there is an awful lot of money on the other side of that $25,000, as Councillor Brown just alluded to. So I will be voting in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I'm just reviewing the eligible and ineligible costs and activities, and what it says is that under the planning grant program, eligible activities must be cost-effective and may include the completion of that inventory, which I think is a really good thing for our community, the development update of a community or that action plan. So I want to highlight that this is something that may be an activity that we can use this funding for. It's not saying you must create an action plan. It's saying these are eligible things that you can use for that money. Data collection and community engagement activities. So if we have 5 member municipalities coming together and we have about $125,000 to do a kind of a region-wide inventory, and I understand that we would be hiring a consultant to do this, that seems like a reasonable expenditure to me for a region-wide kind of inventory of what are our daycare gaps and what could we do better, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm in support of this.
Sorry, I think we lost Councillor Gesselbrock. I think we're going to have to get our coordination around letting me push the button or you push the button. Councillor Gesselbrock, you are next.
Am I on the microphone?
You've got me.
got to turn your cell phone, I'm afraid.
Thank you. My interpretation of this was that it is money to help identify sort of our inventory of childcare spaces and to have a bit of a coordinated effort on where the gaps are and what are the possibilities so that we can funnel the available money that is available for childcare from the province to the most appropriate places. I like the fact that it can be more community-driven from the ground level to get our ducks in order to receive that money. I appreciate Councillor Thorpe's concern about the province downloading its responsibilities and would not want any of that, of course, because taxes are already very high. However, I will be supporting this because I think that we do need to work as a community to plan for childcare and make the best use of the resource available. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martman.
Thank you, through you. I just had a question. I too support this. I believe that it's a collaborative nature that pulled me into it with 125,000 with the other communities involved. From the staff, the budget implication was that it wasn't necessarily money from our coffers, but it would be expected to contribute staff time and in-kind resources. And I'm just wondering the impact on our staff if they feel that this is a positive move to make.
Mr. Lindsay.
Your Worship, as I think was mentioned earlier, if we're successful in receiving more than ourselves as partners, I think there'd be sufficient money to hire a consultant. That's certainly our goal. So we do have capacity to manage that work with the majority of the heavy lifting being done by a consultant.
Thank you. And if I may just add, then the other piece of it was the engagement implication that this would take a significant amount from our community and stakeholder engagement, and I'm all for that. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
I just wanted to know where the money would come from for the consultant. Which budget line is that from? Because I'm assuming it would be around, what, $20,000, $30,000 for a consultant? Which brings what we're going to get to about 10,000.
125,000.
No, split 5 ways, so it's 25,000 is all we would get. And then we're going to have to pay for a consultant, and what's that cost going to be to the city, and which budget does it come from?
Mr. Lindsay.
So Your Worship, again, it's somewhat the timing issue here with how quickly the deadline's coming, but our hope is that we'll have multiple partners from the region on this. So there'll be more than just the city, and each partner is eligible for 25,000. So for example, if all 4 member municipalities and the regional district all decided to participate, we would have 125,000, which would be, in our opinion, sufficient to fund the project.
Okay.
Councillor Gesselbrock? No. If I may say, for what it's worth, Councillor Thorpe characterized it as the Trojan horse. I'll characterize it as not looking a gift horse in the mouth. I agree completely with Councillor Thorpe's remarks around the possibility of downloading, and it is not a civic responsibility. It's not a responsibility for municipal government. But having said that, the thrust of this is to support an application to receive provincial monies via UBCM to essentially inventory, if you will, an aspect of our society which most modern and very progressive democracies have, which is a functioning childcare system that enables people to engage in remunerative work outside the home or even inside the home on occasion. So I, for one, will be voting in support of it. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the 7th Street Pump Station in Force Main. Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll introduce Mr. Rosen, our Senior Manager of Engineering, to introduce the topic. Thank you.
You've just turned yourself off. Now you're on.
Now I'm on? Okay.
I have this lovely screen up here in case the audience doesn't know that tells me if you're green or red. Go and stop.
So the report that you have in front of you tonight is a budget readjustment. Council may remember late last year I provided a presentation on our project management practices and how we conduct cost estimating, project budgeting, and so on. And I told you from time to time we'll come in front of council and we'll reset project budgets, typically for the larger projects. So this is a case where we've been to the market, we've tendered the project, we have quite a bit of certainty around what the project costs are. It's a little bit more than we'd initially estimated, so we're here to reset the budget. And if council has any questions about the project, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. What would be the expected increase in volume on the regional district of Nanaimo's trunk sewer from the diversion from the Chase River trunk sewer, and what is the capacity of the regional district Nanaimo's trunk sewer to accommodate this extra volume? And will this extra volume compromise future development of the South End neighborhood, which we can expect in the future?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Bonner, the increased loading on the RDN trunk sewer, it's actually the same. All it is instead of like the current situation without the pump station, is that the sewage flows down to the regional district's Chase River pump station. It gets pumped through their force main into their trunk sewer. So we're essentially bypassing their pump station and discharging it directly into the trunk sewer. So the flows aren't going to change as a result of our pump station, just the location of the discharge. Now, in terms of their downstream capacity, it's a fairly large trunk sewer. My understanding is they've got some capacity challenges quite far downstream in the system, but really nothing related to this pump station project that we have on the go. Now, in terms of impact to growth in the south end of town, I think the opposite is true. If without this pump station, there would be challenges around accommodating additional sewer loading. So with the pump station, it adds quite a bit of capacity to the south end for growth.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if we could have the motion. Moved by Councillor Brown, directing staff to increase the budget, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. And, well, I was going to say, I think Armstrong beat you to it, but I'm delighted the level of participation as always. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The next is Financial Plan Bylaw 2018, number 7279. Councillor Armstrong, I understand tradition is that the Deputy Mayor makes that motion.
The Municipal Council of the City of Nanaimo in open meeting assemble and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as Financial Plan Bylaw 2018, number 7279. Schedule A attached hereto and forming part of this bylaw is hereby adopted and is a financial plan for the City of Nanaimo for the period of 2019 January 01 to 2023 December 31st. The various items of expenditure set forth in Schedule A are hereby authorized. Schedule B attached hereto and forming part of this bylaw is hereby adopted and is a statement of revenue, objectives, and policies for the City of Nanaimo and for the period of 2019 January 01 to...
Councillor Armstrong, I just need you to move that Financial Plan Bylaw 2018, number 729 be adopted.
Oh, okay, last
I'll
time I
save
had
you.
to read it. Okay, thanks, move it.
Thank you for moving it. Seconded.
Every time it changes for me.
Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much. I understand we have no correspondence to deal with. Notices of motion. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I'd like to make a notice that staff explore the option of deeming the supportive housing units on Labio and Terminal as nuisance properties and to be dealt with accordingly as they see fit based on our bylaw, or however Ms. Gurry could capture that for me.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I do have that motion, and it will come forward to the next council meeting under other business. So there's no discussion tonight on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Under other business, we have Councillor Hemmons' motion regarding Governance and Priorities Committee. Please, Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Am I on? So, in background to this, I think we've had fairly fulsome conversation as a council. For the public, as a new council member, I had some difficulty distinguishing between a committee of the whole meeting versus a council meeting. And I know there's some very clear distinctions. One is decision-making, one is discussion. But for me, that delineation wasn't entirely clear. And there were times during those committee of the whole meetings where I really expected a big, long debate. We didn't get there. And I think in many ways that's because we run our committee of the whole meetings very much like a council meeting. And so they're hard to differentiate, they're hard to distinguish. So what I'm really after in this motion is a really clearly distinct opportunity for us to sit together, to roll up our sleeves, to really engage in one or two meaty issues. And as I've laid out in the terms there, I'm asking for terms of reference that it includes all of us, that it's intended to be an open forum, and that we are allowed and welcome to invite members of the public for content. What else do I want to say? After our conversation with Mr. Cuff last week, I recognize that this Priorities and Governance Committee, or Governance Priorities Committee, pardon me, may also require the addition of an Agendas Committee. It seems like they kind of went in tandem there, so I'm not, this motion or notice of motion was made before that conversation, so I'm more than willing to entertain an addition on this, that this also require an Agendas Committee as laid out by Mr. Cuff. But really, I just, I mean, you guys know where I stand on this. I would really like an opportunity where we have one or two issues on the table that are really pertinent, that we really need to get into. And it's not necessarily in this format where it's, you know, we all press our mics and so on and so forth. I'd just like to have a conversation and to have the space to have that. So that's the intent of the motion.
So you're...
I'm...
Move the motion as set out in the agenda.
I move the motion as set out. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gesselbrock. Discussion. I think you've had your...
Oh, sorry. I did that backwards. See?
I think you've had your turn first off. We'll welcome you back, though. But Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll support the motion. I have to say, honestly, I think it's possibly premature in that due to our council discussions and workshop with Mr. Cuff, I think we've already agreed that there will be an opportunity and in fact a desire for us to restructure our committees and how they operate. And in fact, our committee of the whole, I don't think is a lot different than what this proposed committee would look like. I'm willing to support it. I don't disagree with the intent. I just think we're going there anyway, and we'll also be examining the function of our other, or what has been our other city committees in the past, our standing or select committees, and it's part of a bigger discussion. So, as I say, I'm willing to support it, but I think we're going there anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through the chair to you, Councillor Hemmons. I just had one question. Was the idea of the Governance and Priorities Committee a replacement of the Committee of the Whole or in addition to?
May I?
I think we'll allow that, yes.
A replacement?
A replacement, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
I wholeheartedly support the creation of the Governance and Priorities Committee, affectionately known as the GPC. It's also been called the GPS or the GPD. But I think that it's very important to have a very intentional forum to have in-depth discussion, to really get into the nitty-gritties of topics and have a free-flowing discussion. I think that it would be very important also to have this in conjunction with an agendas committee that just more clearly formalizes the process of setting the agendas for all of the council and committee and the governments and the GPC committee. And I'm excited. I think this is something that's really necessary, and I also see it as a seed committee to build out our committee structure where we can have those discussions of how we want to have our committee structure to look like. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too am very excited about this. While I do think it, in a lot of respects, it does capture the intention of a cow, I think it also has the potential for sort of a structural change in our committees and what stems from that. I'm not sure, and I'm excited for those future discussions, but I think this is a key first step in really shaping our governance model in one that promotes discussion, and I would just support the idea of the Agendas Committee to decide what is directed towards council and what is directed towards the GPC.
There's a part of me that given the positive nature of all the comments, just to suggest we call the question, but I'm feeling generous tonight for time. Some councillors have already made the decision, save for Councillor Armstrong.
Just on the GPC, does that allow for in-camera as well, as we sometimes have to go into in-camera and other, whereas a cow allows that, would the GPC allow that as well?
Your Worship,
Ms.
through
Gurry.
thank you. Through you to Councillor Armstrong, yes. Any committee of council can move in camera, yes.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The next motion is Councillor Bonner regarding community amenity contribution. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I have three motions to read tonight. I was informed by staff a few days ago that the motion on community amenities is actually still on the books, that there was a motion by the previous council on this, and I don't want to belabor staff any more than I have to, so I'm not going to bring this one forward at this time.
All right. Thank you very much.
I voted against my own motion. How about that? May I go to the next one?
Yes, the next one is your motion regarding arts and culture multi-year lease agreements.
And I'd like to make the motion that staff engage with arts and cultural groups who lease property from the city of Nanaimo by May 1st, 2019, to determine if the groups would benefit from multi-year lease agreements in order to be eligible to apply for funding from senior levels of government. And the motion that's in the agenda has some grammatical errors on it, so I'll read it again as I've written it here. That staff engage with arts and cultural groups who lease property from the city of Nanaimo by May 1st, 2019, to determine if the groups would benefit from multi-year lease agreements in order to be eligible to apply for grant funding from senior levels of government for capital projects.
Very good. Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. Councillor Bonner, I think we'll let you speak to the motion first. That seems fair.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this motion came out from conversations that we had with the arts and cultural community. And they raised the issue that funding is available from senior levels of government, but they require leases longer than 1 year and sometimes 5 and 10 years. With the idea that the federal government is willing to spend the money or give the money in these grants, but they want to make sure that what is being paid for will be there for the community to use for years to come, which is why they require the longer leases. So I think we would have given the leases to these organizations anyway, so this is just a great way for them to apply for funding that they may not be eligible for.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I agree with the motion. However, I'd like for capital projects to be removed, because I know some of them can apply for grants if they have the lease that aren't for capital projects. So I would like that removed and just leave it from senior levels of governments.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a friendly amendment, Ms. Gurry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's agreement with the mover and the seconder, then yes, that's.
There's agreement? Very good. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a problem with the motion.
Sorry.
I have a problem with the microphone. Oh, there we go. I don't have a problem with the motion, but I just would like to be assured of one thing. It says, it reads in the motion, would determine if the groups would benefit from multi-year lease agreements. I'd also like the motion to include information on how that would affect the city. There might be some ramification to the city of granting a 5 or a 10-year or a long-term lease, and I would certainly like to be aware of that, in addition to what benefit it might have to the groups involved. So I'm not asking for a change to the motion. I would just like some assurance from the mover or staff that that would be part of the report that comes back. Thank you.
I think we're getting a consensus from senior staff that would be the case.
Thank you.
Any further speakers? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? None? Carried. Thank you very much. The next, Councillor Bonner, motion regarding the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action number 57.
A motion that staff develop and implement an implementation plan for responding to Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action number 57 for Council's consideration by July 1st, 2019.
We have a seconder. Councillor Brown. Councillor Bonner, do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll read out call to action number 57. We call upon federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to provide education to public servants on the history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, and Aboriginal Crown relations. This will require skills-based training in intercultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I just want to know from staff through you, has there already been work done on this?
Mr. Rudolph.
Mic is on. Staff will be coming forward with a presentation and a workshop at a committee of the whole, not too distant future, on the whole subject of reconciliation. So that will be a precursor to further action and developing an action plan for the city.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? None? Motion carried. Thank you. I am pleased to announce that on the December 17, 2018, at the in-camera council meeting, Alan Dick and Kenneth Hampel were appointed to the Board of Variance. Congratulations to those applicants prepared to serve on the Board of Variance. The next is the addition, item F, which is the Protocol Agreement Working Group representatives from the City of Nanaimo. I would ask for a motion for Council to approve the Committee of the Whole recommendation that Councillors Thorpe and Councillors Armstrong serve on the Protocol Agreement Working Group. I don't think it requires my name because the agreement itself provides that the mayor sits and then council, then 2 others are appointed. I moved by Councillor Bonner, seconded by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're now on to question period. Ms. Gurry, if we can have the, or Ms. Snellgrove? Thank you very much. Ken Clark on housing issues. There's no time limit on there, is there? 5 minutes?
Council, thank you very much for your time. Worship and Council, thank you for allowing me this time. Hello, my name is Ken Clark. I own a large excavating company who has been faced with some crippling theft this year. Had a $115,000 machine stolen, got the video, provided it to the police. Police couldn't do anything. They're held by don't know what they're held by, but they're held by something pretty strong. We got very, very minor effect with it, and I went to great effort to get that. Did my own, I basically became my own detective. Pulled it off. They told me, they came to the fact of it being stolen, said they couldn't do anything about it. They said, good luck trying to find it. I told them I would have them in their police station by 7 a.m. the next morning. 8 a.m. I had them there. Still, no action. We are facing a crippling time in our society, and especially in our town, where there's a lot of talk. There's There's too much talk. Talking is, as many know, is 10% of what we actually hear in life, 90% action. So that means we currently have a 90% failure rate, because all we're getting is a lot of talk. My question here is this, stepping back there, but I have 2 beautiful toddlers. I would do anything to protect them. My son is 2, my daughter is 4. I spend a lot of time when they're at my house. I'm a single daddy. I own 4 companies. I work my butt off. I pay my taxes. You know, I'm supporting about $500,000 in employees. We're all taxpayers here. So I've heard a lot of really good things. I do have some good faith in you guys that you are going to do some absolute things that will change this. But if all it is words and no action to follow it up, all we're doing is listening. There's nothing going to happen. My question is this: when is it that I can return to public parks with my children and feel safe again? When can I walk the streets with my kids at nighttime and feel safe? Saturday night, I return home to my house, and I live in North Chinglepot, far away from these whatever facilities you want to call them. And I return home Saturday night just about midnight with a friend of mine, and I see 2 kids scoping out my house. And I'm not a fearful man. I'm fearful of nothing. You guys all probably heard about someone who ran into a cougar on a Nanaimo Yacht Club in the summer. That was me. So after that, there is nothing that is can be possibly more scary than that. You know, the moments of sitting there feeling like something's going to eat you alive. But my question is this: when can I return to my parks with my kids again? You know, now my daughter's 4 and she knows that the parks are scary. And yet, nothing is being done. The police have their hands tied behind their back. And the previous council did nothing but infight, destroyed our town. And I know you guys have inherited a very bad situation from a lot of them, but it's up to you guys to make this difference. I know, you know, the world's so concerned about banning plastic straws, yet promoting plastic needles in droves of them. Like, you see them all over the place. So my concern is, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people because I've heard it a lot now. Me and a bunch of intellects in town created a group called Us Now Nanaimo because we're tired of it. And we do hear and see a lot of people who, in this council, I've done a lot of background checks on everyone in here, and I know we have a good council. I know that there's been a good council voted in, but it means nothing if it's just words and no action. Like when I have guys that come to my company, and the first thing I want to see is I want to see if they're action people versus words people. I have a multi-million-dollar excavating company that's been crippled this year with theft. $115,000 machine stolen in broad daylight with videos to prove it and videos showing their faces, and yet nothing done. You know what I got? I found out that kids got a slap on the wrist. One just said he didn't do it. That was it. Nothing more. The other kid had to work all summer long to pay his $2,000, and he wasn't able to buy his first truck. And I was supposed to feel sorry for that? I'm still paying for the damage that was done to that machine. That machine cost one of my employees to be let go because I couldn't afford to pay him and fix the machine. So I really hope that the words that I'm saying are absolutely being heard, because I know with all of the people that were previously in this room cheering and hooting and hollering, a lot of them walked out of here thinking that those words of you guys were going to turn into actions. But me and my experience, my 20 years of business experience, I started my first companies at 18, I'm not new to this world. I can see that those words have to actually step into action to accomplish things. So I ask the council, I beg the council, for the safety of my kids and everyone's kids and grandkids in here, that there be some serious action taken to this. Because it's not just those around those tent cities. It's not just, there's a gentleman up here who had $20,000 worth of his stuff stolen and no action. You were saying before, call the cops? What do? They don't do anything. I get called, like, I've called them so many times, and unless I said that, hey, I'm going to go hurt this guy or something, then they won't show up. They won't show up to protect the people that are paying the taxes. They will show up to protect the criminal. And what world are we living in where this is the case? None of us feel safe anymore. The whole place was filled with people who feel unsafe, and that's a small portion of them, a very small portion. So for the sake of my kids, I will protect them with my life, as would any good parent. But taking my kids to the parks safely no longer exists. My kid's favorite park is the park down by the ocean with the crab, and you can't even walk around the crab anymore without needles or some crackhead who's trying to accost my 4-year-old daughter. Like, someone's gonna reach out to my daughter, I'm gonna be in fight or flight mode, as any one good parent would be. So I really ask, from the bottom of my heart, that the council really hears my words. Nothing can be done without action. Words are empty. 10%, 90%. Do we want to be on the 90% failure rate or the 90% success rate? That comes from people truly, truly working together at this. Thank you very much for your time. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The next is Karen Kuwika. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Good evening, Your Worship and council members. Thank you for taking my question. It's Karen Kuwika, and I'm a founding member of the Neighborhood Standards Advocacy Group, and I'm a resident of the 200 block of Vancouver Avenue. I have actually, if you'll indulge me, 2 specific questions for you tonight. The first one is, having participated in some of the BC Housing meetings and the community consultation meetings from Island Crisis Care, and listening to your comments today about the steps that you'll be taking towards improving this situation, I'd like to know if you would also consider including delegates from the community in your solution planning process, presuming all of your decisions have not been made. And the reason for that is that we have great ideas. We're capable, conscious, intelligent people that are dealing with this on the ground on a daily basis. And we would like to be part of the solution process rather than have solutions imposed upon us, which is what we're currently dealing with now. So.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. May I ask, are you a part of the community action? I'm sorry, I'm going to get the acronym wrong. The group that BC Housing, RCMP, City, Community, thank you, Community. Are you a part of that group?
I have participated in those meetings, yes.
And
as I understand it, the delegates for the community have not been officially announced yet, so the meetings are inclusive at this point.
I see. And do you see that as an appropriate forum for kind of a community generation of solutions?
In my experience so far, the meeting has primarily been an exchange of concerns and information about how those might be addressed. It hasn't been looking at the solutions in general, and it's not from the perspective of how the city could assist the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay, if I might ask, the committee, as I understand it, does take recommendations and people's concerns are taken into account. Perhaps you could illuminate a little for me?
Your Worship, and what I would say is so far there's been 2 Community Advisory Committee meetings regarding terminal and 1 regarding Labio. So I would say my sense in having attended both of them is they're somewhat early and in the formative stage, and I would agree that a lot of the discussion right now tends to be around action items on the sites and what needs to be done and sharing that information. But I do believe there's the opportunity to have broader discussions about potential solutions or inputs to both BC Housing and the operator and back to the city about how to overall improvement to the situation.
Thank you. And you have a second question?
Yes, thank you. We would like to know, our neighborhood organization, the Neighborhood Standards Advocacy, if Your Worship and Council are willing to say no to BC Housing rezoning applications that are for low barrier housing, and instead support applications that are for recovery first policy?
I think I can answer on behalf of council and as someone with some political experience. Until a proposition is put before council in the appropriate manner, nobody's going to speculate on how they're going to vote or not vote in the circumstances. But I appreciate the opportunity to respond to that question, but I think we're a little early perhaps, but Councillor Armstrong wants to say something.
Through you to staff, I know that this is one community group. There's also the Newcastle Community Group. Have they been invited too? Because there's about, I think, 3 or 4 neighborhood associations that are affected by the terminal supportive housing.
The membership of the committee was very much self-selected, so those people who are interested in participating have been participating. I do know certainly at the last meeting that I attended, there was representation from the Newcastle Neighborhood Association.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Barclay?
Mayor and Council, Happy New Year. Good to see you all.
Happy New Year.
I have several questions pertaining to meetings and protocol. The 3 delegations tonight, it troubled me a little bit. When I look at the website for the city, it says, appearing before Nanaimo City Council, to appear as a delegation at a council meeting, the topic you wish to speak about must be an item already on the council agenda. I kind of see the second one, seeking the $10,000, how that was related to Councillor Bonner's motions. That was kind of on, but I didn't see how the other 2 were related to the agenda tonight. So that troubled me a little bit. Also, I'm not sure about groups coming and seeking money, whether it's the $5.6 million at council meetings or the $10,000. That doesn't seem appropriate to me, particularly when there is nothing on the agenda for citizens to look at. I don't know how well you are prepared. In the past, this has happened and a motion was made and passed, and with insufficient discussion, I believe. I think this is more suitable for audit committee or council of the whole. So could someone speak to that, please?
Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can both of Mr. Barclay's questions because they both they're both related. So tonight's meeting was scheduled on Councillor's key date calendar as a committee of the whole, and it was changed to be a special council meeting. So the reason that the delegations that were unrelated to items on the agenda were allowed is because it was originally set up to be a committee of the whole, and they had signed up at that time when it was still a committee of the whole. And normally in the past, when we've had to change a committee of the whole to a special council meeting, we've allowed those delegations to continue to come because they would have and should have been able to if it was a committee of the whole. And the reason for the $10,000 ask, I believe, as one of the delegations, normally you're right, it would go to a finance and audit committee meeting, and that is our process. But there was no finance and audit this month, but we did talk to staff have talked to council about listening to these requests and not making spur-of-the-moment decisions until staff can report back and have the appropriate information available for council. So it was more of just a listening for the delegation until the Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held again next month. So I hope that answers both of those, because you're right, if this had have been a council meeting, the delegations wouldn't have been appropriate, and had we had a Finance and Audit Committee meeting this month, that delegation would have gone there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I breathe a sigh of relief. There were no motions to grant the money. It was actually, I think, it was $564,000 for the boathouse that they were asking in 2014 dollars. My second question relates to protocol, and it's more disturbing. during the presentation from the Newcastle Neighborhood Association, there was a lot of cheering, and I don't believe that that is part of council protocol. It makes me uncomfortable. I wonder if they are permitted to cheer, am I therefore allowed to boo and jeer when I disagree with what a speaker or a councillor is saying?
Mr. Barclay, as mayor and chair of the meeting, and appreciating your position as an educator, I'll try and be a more stern disciplinarian next time if there's any outrageous outbursts from the public that include cheering or booing or any other comment that might indicate what their position might be. But thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I take Mr. Barclay's comments to heart. I just wanted to comment on your earlier question, because this has come up before, Mr. Barclay, and I know that I personally made it clear to council that I will not support any off-the-floor motion regarding funding, no matter how worthwhile the cause might be. I think we deserve the benefit of background information and a staff report. So I totally agree with you on that. Thank you.
And one last question. This is a different topic, relates to 14A, Councillor Hemmond's motion. So these meetings, which will be, thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for your question, they will be closed and open. Would they constitute an additional meeting burden to councillors if it happens?
So my intent with this meeting, am I on, is to replace the committee of the whole.
Okay, all right, I
So
wasn't
no
clear on
extra
that.
meetings, yeah.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
perfect. And you spoke of these workshops with Mr. Cuff. Where can I find those meetings? Is that something that happened in closed meetings?
The first one was in a closed meeting, and Ms. Gurry can give you the reasons for that. The second one was at our last Monday's, pardon me, it wasn't a closed meeting, it was a workshop. It was a workshop. It was for staff and council. And the second, Mr. Cuff was on the line, and we clarified some questions around the Governance and Priorities Committee, and that was last week, if I'm not mistaken, and that was open to the public, and we had members of the public there.
What date?
If maybe Ms. Gurry can help you.
January 7th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Your Worship, could I just follow up on the George
Yes.
Cuff sessions? Thank you, Your Worship. So council had 2 sessions with Lisa Sworn, council orientation, and an orientation with Mr. George Cuff, and they were not meetings of council. What constitutes a meeting of council is a majority of council furthering the agenda or the business of the city of Nanaimo. These were orientation sessions where council wasn't making motions or furthering the agenda of the city. They were actually getting educated on their duties as councilors. So the meeting last week on the 7th was a special committee of the whole, and as all meetings of council, they have to be open unless there's an appropriate reason under the charter to close them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Pat McGee.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. It's great to see you all here at the start of the year. My question is on delegations. Tonight it appeared that the 5-minute period is not working. And 5 minutes in some of the presentations isn't adequate. When it was brought out, the changes were made. I believe the previous council said it was open for amending to go back to a 10-minute if necessary. Could council take that into consideration?
I don't think we're going to make any motions off the floor,
No,
but
but
I
could you
think
take
it's
it
fair
into
to say that
consideration?
you raise a point. It's either that or I get stiffer as soon as we get to 5. I'm just going to cut them off or interrupt earlier at 4. At this point, I must say my experience as chair of the council meetings is that people have been generally speaking pretty good in behavior, and council chambers on both sides of the barrier have been pretty good. So certainly I think we'll take it into consideration, but I believe councillors Thorpe, Armstrong and Bonner have something to say in response.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the short answer, Mr. McGee, is yes, we could. I don't know that personally I wish to, but we can have that discussion because I believe, and I could stand to be corrected by Mr. Rudolph, I believe the intent is that, or Ms. Gurry, we are going to have another look at the procedure bylaw, and there might well be a number of things that we wish to tweak in there. So we could have that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McGee. For me, part of it is when you get 10 or 12 delegations and you're doing 10 minutes, you know, you're at 2 hours just for delegations, whereas the 5 minutes brings it back. And if you look at the UBCM or even those, they actually go to 3 minutes only. So I think part of it is to make your point as succinctly as possible so we don't get a lot of background and rambling information. So for me, I actually like the 5 minutes because I think you should be able to get your point to council in 5-minute period. Because a lot of, if you've got preamble stuff, can be sent as a package so we can read it before it happens. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's a bit early in the process to make that decision. I think we should just give it a bit of time. But with that said, the PGC, I think, GPC, see now do I get it, right? GPC will actually be looking at the possibility of having delegations even longer, right? So that we get a more fulsome conversation happening, so that, you know, full ideas can be brought out. So we may keep it at 5 for these things and make it longer on the, whatever the acronym of that committee will be.
Or the mayor at the time could stop the person at 5 minutes. Stop the person at 5 minutes and then ask the council as a whole, can there be an additional 5 minutes added to that time? And if not, this person has to take their seat or they're given the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks for your suggestion, Mr. McGee. Much appreciated. Mr. McDonald, you want to come forward and introduce yourself?
Your Worship, members of council, I have with me, I'm Fred McDonald. I live on Stewart Avenue in the Newcastle neighborhood. My daughter, Katya, my granddaughter, Larissa, who's the most joyful thing in our house. And my question pertains to her being in our neighborhood. You've heard a lot tonight about what we're going through in Newcastle, and I'm afraid you're going to hear a lot more. We had a spike today in criminal activity, and in front of children, I can't really speak about some of the things that happened today. I was involved in the earliest meeting that BC Housing had long after they decided to dump this project into our neighborhood. And Mr. Lindsay may recall that I was at the first meeting with him where there was a city people, BC Housing people, and people from Island Crisis and so on. At that meeting, I ranted and raved and was poo-pawed by BC Housing because I told them exactly what was going to happen if you put 80 people in our neighborhood with this kind of a background. And I was wrong, Mr. Lindsay, I was wrong. You can tell BC Housing I was wrong because everything is a lot worse than even I predicted it. And I'm going to give you one small example. You've been here, you've been working hard. We all want to go home. In October, Larissa here, who's 11 years old, reached the stage in her independence where she could walk our dog around the neighborhood. Now we can't let her out of the house. And the dog barks when we get intruders. Thank God for that. So the question I want to leave you with tonight.
We have people on our property while we let the dog out, getting ready to self-administer drugs.
Yeah.
So since this housing development has.
So here's the question I want you to think about as you drive home tonight or walk home. Oh wait, now, wait about walking may not be so safe, but as you go home tonight, ask yourself, why is it not safe for an 11-year-old girl to walk through a residential neighborhood, a fine residential neighborhood, a historic residential neighborhood that goes back well over 100 years? I just leave you with that question, why is it unsafe for children in our neighborhood? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald and your family. Bonnie Stevenson.
Good evening.
My name is Bonnie Stevenson. I'm a former resident of Vancouver Avenue, as well as a multi-property owner on Vancouver Avenue. I've been a part of the Neighborhood Standards Advocacy Group, as well as the Community Advisory Committee with BC Housing and Island Crisis. My question tonight is, due to the negative impact of 250 Terminal, BC Housing in our neighborhood with, sorry, let me start again. My question is, will you, the Mayor and Council, help us and support us by expediting the process of BC Housing to find proper zoned sites for this type of modular housing on a smaller scale, maybe separated, some with low barriers, some without? I know it's a bit of a conflict on that opinion, but what's happening in our neighborhood isn't working, and what I would like is a timeline. Hopefully, within 1 year that this site is shut down, preferably sooner. It's not working, and I realize that that's a big ask, and I know that you're working hard to find appropriate sites, and I realize that in the past, a lot of these sites have been vetoed by other communities. But this is causing some really big concerns in our neighborhood. It's going to cause concerns for the economy of Nanaimo, and as we're trying to build up this beautiful city, this is bringing us down. So my request is that we try to terminate this terminal site within 1 year. And because everyone else had a couple of questions, I'm just going to throw one more out there. If maybe at the next meeting that Mr. Lindsay could share with us, if you've made any progress as finding alternative sites and what that looks like for us and the future of 250 Terminal.
Ms. Stevenson, thank you.
Thank you.
I can, in response, say, obviously, because we don't provide the funding and land availability is something beyond our control, so to speak, to some extent, but I assure you that this council is very conscious of its responsibility to ensure that when the province is prepared to step forward to fund, that we have a series of appropriate sites that have, how shall I say, passed muster in the neighborhoods, are the best possible solutions available, and that they'll be created in such a way that we won't see what has happened with the rush job, if I can phrase it that way, of what's happened at the terminal site. Councillor Armstrong.
I think, too, what people have to recognize, unless we get detox and treatment, the problem's not going away. Doesn't matter. I've done so much research on this. The Housing First model is not working. It works for those with mental addictions, and then they get treatment, but all the studies now are showing that for those with drug addictions, they need treatment first and then housing. We're not doing that because we don't have the availability for treatment or detox. So I think that's something that you need to get the message out not only to our provincial counterparts, but our federal counterparts too, that there has to be investment in detox and treatment, or the problem's not going to go away, it's just going to get bigger.
And I agree with that statement.
Like, I mean, we as a municipal government have just a small little piece, and what our role's always been is to find a piece of land. We don't own that much land, so then we have to go out and buy, and when we were looking previously, people would find out what it was for, so they wouldn't sell to us, and so on and so on. So it really has to go to the federal and provincial levels to really start working on treatment for this, or they're going to have to look at legalizing it all, and you get it from a doctor and a pharmacist, and go from there, because then the crime will go down because they won't have to steal to feed their habit. My thoughts.
But we're just here and now in the city of Nanaimo, and that's obviously what needs to happen going forward in the future. And 80 people on one site with diversified needs is a serious problem. So what I'm looking for is the support of what can we do locally, right here, right now, with what we're capable of doing, what you're capable of doing. And whether it's naming it a nuisance property and shutting it down, or diversifying it throughout all the different neighborhoods, because I'm in total support of that, and proper modular housing fits in with any neighborhood, but we have ATCO trailers. And BC Housing's solution is to put paint on them, to make them prettier. It doesn't make them prettier, that just costs more money. I don't want to spend any more money on ATCO trailers. I want proper housing for people. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Karan Usher.
Good evening, and thanks for hearing us all out. I know you've heard them all, you've heard all the stories. Sorry, I'm Karen Usher. I was born and raised in Nanaimo. And I do not mean to be disrespectful to anybody, but I am so disappointed in the changes in Nanaimo. It is sad to see what our town has become. I literally grew up downtown Nanaimo. We lived in a lot of areas in Nanaimo when I was a kid. We've moved a lot. So I know from one end of this town to the other. I've heard a lot of comments and questions from the council. I've heard it from Facebook. I've heard it from people that live in Nanaimo. I own a couple of residences in Nanaimo. I cannot go out my door without seeing disgust, disgrace, sad. I can't drive to work along Stewart Avenue without almost hitting somebody because I work early mornings and late nights. When they're just whipping their bikes down the road, across the streets, I can't tell you how many times in a few months. This has costed just me alone, one resident of Nanaimo, a lot of money because of the theft, because of the vandalism. I had to replace a lock on my house. I've had the fire department at my house twice because my alarms are going off. That's costing the city money. We all understand that it all costs money, but this housing is costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. People's taxes have gone up, but yet I couldn't sell my house without a huge loss because I'm in the area. That makes no sense to me at all. My question, I guess, is, I've heard temporary housing, but yet we got a letter saying there's going to be permanent housing there. Building a different building isn't changing the residents that are in the neighborhood. How is that going to help us? And how long, or what does it look like to the council? What does temporary housing mean to the council? How long are we going to continually have to pay to fix our locks, to fix our fences, to fix our windows, to fix our vehicles, to find our vehicles or any other property that has been stolen? How much has been paid in insurance just in these last few months alone that it's costing Nanaimo residents? So my question is, what does temporary housing look like? And at 250 Terminal, is there going to be permanent housing?
That is a question, and I'm not trying to avoid your obviously heartfelt concern, which is genuine and one that council and everybody else has. BC Housing is going to potentially, I mean, the province has exercised its paramount jurisdiction, if you will. Certainly, I think it is in the province's interest, in the interest of BC Housing, to make every supportive housing unit, wherever it may be, a success. At the present time, one could not describe what's happened at 250 Terminal Avenue as a success, and we're going to work to ensure that they understand that. I have no doubt that what's happened tonight and the comments that have been made will be passed on to the appropriate people at both Island Crisis and BC Housing and to the Minister's office as well. None of us are happy, Ms. Usher, none of us are happy.
My other thing is, I also heard tonight that, yes, the province is listening. If the province is listening, why are we already looking at building another one of these in Parksville? That tells me that the province isn't listening. Pardon me?
Councillor Armstrong?
That was done months before. There was a public hearing there and then it went to the vote prior to the election. I think the vote was in, I think, July. So that was done prior to this one moving in. It was done months ago. It is before the court still, though, because there's a large citizens group that is trying to block it from being built, and I don't think it's been heard before the courts yet. But it passed all the zoning requirements months ago.
And they can't just say, hey, this didn't work. Why are we going forward with this?
Just to answer that, that's why they're going to court with it. They have to go to court, and then it's going to be in the hands of a judge to decide if he's going to allow the zoning process that took place, because they have to go based on the zoning, not what the building's for, but it has to be, they have to say that the zoning process was flawed. And maybe Mr. Lindsay can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the basis for the court hearing, was a flawed zoning process.
Mr. Lindsay.
It's probably never a good idea to have me comment on what's happening in another municipality, because my sources are probably the same as yours, but yes, my understanding was that there was a challenge for the process for rezoning. My understanding was it also was for permanent supportive housing, not the temporary nature that we currently have.
So I'm sorry, I didn't
It's a
hear
different-
the answer of what is temporary housing.
It's a different sort of housing. That's permanent site.
So
in
for
Parksville.
250, what is temporary housing? What does that mean? How long does that mean to the council?
I think,
Councillor
again,
Armstrong.
going back to when it was presented to us, 2 to 3 years. Is that correct, Councillor Thorpe? I think we were told 2 to 3 years. Then we were told at the time that if they were going to make it permanent, they would follow through the city's processes, which is the zoning changes, bylaw, all of that. So they would have to go through the public engagement process. I'm sure Mr. Lindsay can explain it better than I, but they did tell us that if it was to go through permanent, they would follow our proper processes, which would happen for any other supportive housing.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just can confirm, and through all of the presentations that I sat with BC Housing at prior, they confirmed that they would reevaluate the use of the site. They said this was temporary in nature. Their long-term plans were not finalized, but whatever they decided to come forward with, they would follow the due process of the local government, in this case, our requirements, including zoning, and if necessary, applying for rezoning to the site.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion for adjournment is appropriate now. Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.
How am I ever going to go?